Coming up on the Relebogile Mabotja Podcast today, we have the peaceful one, and she'll be sharing some dating tips with you. Also, some guidelines just in terms of becoming a better version of yourself. She will also be sharing a whole bunch of information about why dating is so difficult at the moment and a call to action for all of you watching. Stay tuned. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Relebogile Mabotja Podcast right here on YouTube. Thank you in advance for subscribing, because I know you're going to do the right thing and you're going to hit that notification bell so you can be the first to find out who we're going to be talking to on the show, which I've just decided is for cool people, because that's why this podcast is here, to talk to interesting and cool people and just hear what they're all about. So today we have a person who is known as the peaceful one, but she is Mrs. Let me re-emphasize, Mrs. Dudu Nhlabathi-Madonsela in the building.
Hello.
How are you?
How are you?
Listen, I just feel like, it almost feels like we just saw each other recently.
Exactly. It
Right?
feels like a reunion.
It does feel like, and a very good reunion.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for accepting the invite. I feel like, you being the peaceful one, I knew this lady when she was Dear Sis Dudu. Now, if you're a millennial and you hear Dear Sis Dolly into the Dear Sis Dudu, then you'll understand how far back this woman has gone into the space that she's in. And I'm just like so amazed at how you have evolved with all of the stuff that you did. We met through a mutual friend.
Yes.
Pilani Bubu.
Oh, yes.
Who
Yes,
also happens to be my cousin.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yes. And I feel like we were at that Bluebird shopping center at Melrose.
Remember. It was
And
just
we
the three
met-
of us,
yes,
right? Yes.
That's how I met you for the first time.
Yes, I remember.
And then afterwards, she kept saying, you need to meet this woman, And we ended up connecting. And I started having her on my radio show. Because when I was doing early breakfast, we were not doing anything that was dating content.
Yeah.
And the first time I was talking, I'm like, yo, this woman is smart. And then I was like, where your man though, girl? And then she was like, well, this is where we are now. You have got one of the most interesting jobs in the world. Please tell us, like, when you were a kid, were you all about love? Were you into that stuff?
Not even, hey. I mean, everything that's happening in my life right now, I feel like if somebody came like 15 years ago and said, this is where you'd be, I'd be like, never mind, are you serious? Like, how?
Yeah.
But I think for me, the main thing was that in 2010, I left a boyfriend. And then I ventured into the dating world. I was like, yo, rough out there. And I didn't want to get played. But I've always had interest in human behavior. So I was like, okay, there must be a method to this. Started exploring online, then found a couple of people who were teaching the art of attraction in different ways. And I started learning that, and I took so much interest in it, I actually went deeper into it. But I think the main thing for me, how I became a dating coach, was because I started sharing my advice on social media. And people were like, it works. And they started calling me Dear Sis Dudu,
And that's how that came.
And I became a dating coach. But I think, the interest in interpersonal relationships and people, I think it's always been there. And probably this was my path. And I needed certain things in my life to ignite that within me. And yeah, I like it.
And there's something about the era we are living in, particularly for Black homes.
Yes.
Where, you know how people say the devil is breaking up families, and we as women are coming into our own in a different way. What do you think that has done to what your job is? Do you think that you, as a dating coach, your job is more important now? Or do you think your job is actually moving into a space of, I don't want to say obsolete, I can't think of the other word, but where it's becoming redundant?
Interesting enough, in the last 3 years, I've had more people take interest in dating coaching. I mean, I've been in the space for a while, right? And in the beginning, people would be like, why do I need to learn how to date?
We didn't even know it was a real thing, if I'm honest. I was like, so what, dating coach?
What is that?
So wait on, do you go with us on the date and you say, it's your turn to speak?
Exactly.
I couldn't understand what it was.
Because people were like, And people used to think that, you should naturally know how to date. And what we didn't realize, Relebogile, was that there were certain skills that were imparted by our parents, by the structures of our society and how we live as people, that allowed us to form interpersonal relationships. And what we've done in the last 15 to 20 years is we've taken our kids, we've put them in townhouses. They no longer play in the street, right? So they're not learning the art of negotiation. They're not learning the art of conflict management. They're not learning the art of compromising, right? And they don't have the tools to form interpersonal relationships. And
community is not there like it used to be.
And it's not there. That's number one. Number two, we've also embraced a lot of the Western principles. So post-1994, in trying to find identity as a people and also integrating into the global landscape. We've taken a lot of Western principles. And if you go into a lot of the Western worlds, the biggest problem right now is loneliness. And it's because of the fact that they are very much into hyper-individualism. It's all about me, it's all about boundaries. So now we have this big talk of people creating boundaries, leaving and exiting WhatsApp groups, right? Blocking people, protecting their peace and so forth. And what happens is that when people find themselves in a situation where there's conflict, because they don't have the tools to manage it,
they exit. To bounce.
Yes, they exit these conflict situations. And the third and the most important thing, and it's impacting millennials, is that in South Africa as millennials, one, we'll probably, as black millennials, be recorded as probably the richest generation. So we are richer than the generations before us, and because of a couple of things. When we came into the work environment, it was during the Thabo Mbeki era. Ample opportunities. It was easier for us to find a job than Gen Zs. So it was easy for us to build a skill set and also build resources, which is taking Gen Zs a little bit harder or longer for them to do that, right? And also, no one in our family has done adulting like we've done before, right? So
with the amount of tech, but we also had we come from the era of yellow pages, map books, and we've seen how technology shifted.
And also in terms of how we are parenting and forming relationships, right? So we are no longer a do as I tell you type of parenting. We are embracing much more unconventional ways in which we are building relationships with our kids. So we're navigating the space. We're also navigating a space where we are forming interest groups as black people, whereby the class system in some shape or form is coming back. And also we have interest groups. We are organizing ourselves. So we're navigating all of these dynamics, right? And as we're navigating these dynamics, we also have to form interpersonal relationships. So the reason why dating is so hard is because we are juggling so many things, right? And we are also seeing the impact of some of the decisions we've made. And we made those decisions, it came from a good place, right? The decision around we want to create safety and a safe environment for our kids, it came from that place, but these are the consequences of that, right? The decision around to say, you know what, I'm not going to be a victim of black tax or forever giving to my family without receiving anything. I'm going to create boundaries. We went on the far extreme end, and we no longer have those, the tools in order to navigate relationships. And then we also are millennials who are parenting our parents, we're parenting our kids, we're guiding in some shape or form, be it in managerial roles, Gen Zs and so forth, and we're also dating at the same time. And we're navigating all the space. So it's very hard. I really understand people. So, my book, the first part of my book is about the fact that the reason why you're single is not only about you. There are so many dynamics at play, but a lot of people do not understand these dynamics. And so what we're doing is that we're pointing fingers at each other. Women are like this, men are like this, these people are like this and so forth and whatever. And we don't understand that we're navigating these dynamics. And I'm trying to bring that to the fore for people to be conscious, because what happens is that we approach it with empathy. So when you're meeting that 40-something-year-old guy, the millennial or the Gen X, right, whereby his father was a migrant labor and he had left, and this boy was elevated into the head of the family, and he's never been challenged, he's never been held accountable, and now we're getting married. And now You are asking him to be accountable for his actions. You are asking him tough questions, and he's struggling with that. A part of him, it's not about him. It's about how he's been socialized. And it's about taking him to a space like therapy for him to learn to be a different person, right? For him to embrace those things, the same as females. Right now, corporate is choosing females over males. The gender dynamics are changing. But yes, we've been raised to say, you know, an attractive guy is the guy who can look after you, who's the head of the family. And we're also learning to navigate this particular space. Now you have a male whereby, oh, she's coming home at 6 and she can't cook and she's tired, you know, but yet she still wants me to lead. She wants me to do this and so forth. And, you know, we don't know how to express our frustrations because we don't even understand what's going on. And we're trying to find advice. And the people who were meant to advise us have never had to navigate this, right? And it's becoming a little bit difficult for them. And instead of us taking all this blame and all this strain and so forth, we need to just take a step back and say, what's really, really going on? And how do I adjust my expectation of the sex that I'm attracted to or the person that I'm attracted to? How do I apply empathy? Because unfortunately, for us millennials, we are setting the template. We are the generation that's setting the template. The people who are actually going to enjoy the fruits of our labor are our kids. Dating will be much, much more easier, forming interpersonal relationships, because we're going to be correcting all the things that, you know, we are seeing are contributing to the problem. But right now, millennials and probably early Gen Zs, unfortunately, it's going to be a bit of a storming and norming phase because we're learning to navigate this new world.
Seeing flames.
I know people, you know, they like, give us a quick solution how to fix this, but actually, it's a collective problem. It's not an individual problem. And I don't have the word for it. It's not even a problem. It's unfortunately the era that we find. And it's a natural evolution of society based on the changes that we have encountered as a people and, you know, redefining ourselves and finding our place. It's very natural for us to find ourselves in this space. We're not broken as a society. We are just navigating the space. Unfortunately, we don't have the tools. And we need a couple of Dudus. We need a couple of people to share those tools and to help people be able to ask themselves the right questions, to receive each other with care. And I emphasize this, receive each other with care, because the pointing of fingers is not helping anyone. You're still single even if you're pointing fingers. So maybe try a different strategy. Receive people with care.
I just had a realization as you were speaking about what got you into the space. And the realization is I am so fascinated about human behavior, where it comes from. And I think for where I am in my career, talking to people is just the most fascinating thing for me. It doesn't have to be a public figure. It could just be a person sharing their interesting story. And just looking at what you're saying about the kind of conundrum we find ourselves in as millennials, and like you say, we're parenting our parents while we're parenting our children, while we're parenting our inner child, while we are trying to make that money, while we are trying to be, I don't need X, Y, and Z at the same time. We need X, Y, and Z. What do you think people are not saying? Because my experience, and just from what I see, the conversations online just do not reflect reality. Like anybody can say, oh, if a man doesn't bring blah, blah to the table, that person is still dating those guys not bringing blah, blah to the table. And you still have men who say if a woman doesn't, they are still dating women that don't X, Y, and Z. I mean, I saw a man who was talking about as a single man, he started dating a woman who has 4 kids. And he's like, you could look at me and call me a simp, but I fell in love with this person and we are in such a routine. Those are not her kids, they are our kids now. I'm not a stepdad, I'm a dad. And culture says, oh, you've got single mom, too many babies.
Yeah.
So do you think that there's a big disconnect between the loud voices and opinions online and real life? Because I know some men are like, women will never spend money on me. Do you know how many men are being carried by women, not just their mothers? Their sisters are carrying their brothers, women are carrying their partners, women are carrying their boyfriends, women are carrying their baby dads.
Yeah.
Where do you think the disconnect is between what reality is and what we see online?
So the question you asked is what are people not saying?
Yeah.
What people are not saying is that I don't understand the system. I don't know how to navigate the system. And if I articulate that, I feel like a failure. So
when we say the system, what do we mean the system?
the practices that are put in place, the cultural practices, the society norms, the rules, the unspoken things in society that says, if you want to appear like an alpha male, this is how you should be behaving. If you want to appear like you're winning in life, this is how you should be behaving, right? And you have to understand when practices and systems are put in place, they are put with that in terms of the times in which they put in. This is the context in terms of where society was at that point. And what has happened to us as black people is that we had pre-apartheid and then we had post-apartheid. We had an interrupted history, to be quite honest. And that interrupted history means that, so I'll give an example. Polygamy, right? Polygamy, I don't have an issue with polygamy, but I'm going to say something a bit controversial. I don't think it works the way it was intended in modern society. And I'll tell you why.
You mean the way polygamy is being practiced in this day and age is not how it was supposed to be? Is that what you mean?
No. The way in which polygamy was structured does not work in modern society.
Okay, yes.
And the reason why I say that is that, you know, people think that polygamy was designed to serve the man. And actually polygamy was designed to serve society. There were females who would also choose to be in a polygamous relationship. Because let's say, for example, I'm a widow and I have kids, right? And I cannot inherit anything of my husband's or land back in the day, or my father's land or anything like that. It made sense for me to be tied to a man in order to be able to have access to these resources for the survival of my kids, right? So what has happened, and also from a polygamous perspective, is that every wife operated from the same base. I did not have resources, I did not have money, I did not have inheritance. When I walked in, I had nothing. So if the man gave me 20 cents and gave the other woman 20 cents and so forth and whatever, it worked, right? But now you have Dudu, you have Relebogile, right? And what happens is that you are doing all these wonderful things and so forth, and you're generating income. And I'm sitting at home and I'm painting my nails and I'm looking pretty. Are you going to sacrifice your child's inheritance to support my kids? Because it's supposed to go into a central pot, right? And also, you no longer need a man in order to be able to navigate life, right?
Yeah.
But now polygamy says that, you know, this is the structure and this is how you're supposed to go about it. And what people don't realize is that as a black collective, we used to evolve. It's just that we had an interrupted history. And probably if we look at the history 1,000 years before apartheid, we could find that the practice of polygamy has evolved ever since. But what we did was that after 1994, we said we want to find our identity as a collective. And we went and we adopted practices from an era that no longer, well, the way in which the practice or the culture is practiced no longer serves us, because we
needed to create a new template that makes sense.
Because culture
for the
evolves.
World. Yeah.
It really is not particularly static, right? And what has happened, that going back to your question, is that now we have this template that has been set, and it no longer serves us. But then people are still living their lives based on this template. And they don't even know that we can evolve it. And sometimes when people say, we want to evolve this template, they're called clever blacks. You are anti-traditional views and so forth and whatever. And sometimes when you listen to the person, it's not about the fact that they are rejecting tradition. They're just saying, can we practice it in a way that is practical right now? And I think what people are really, really saying when you're seeing gender dynamics changing and the role of women in society changing and so forth, especially a lot of men are sitting with this thing that there's a template that's set. This is what it means for me to be a man. But it's not working. But if I had to articulate that, I'm seen as weak. I'm seen as I don't want to be the kind of man that I'm designed to be. I don't know how to man up and so forth. But ultimately, and that's why we have the suicide rate. Think about it. It's very hard to be a Gen Z right now, right? In my era, you used to graduate within 3 months, you had a job. And 3 months was long. Like, then by the time you graduate, you had a job.
Yeah.
Now you're having people sit 1 year, 2 years without a job. And very brilliant kids, right? And then you have
who also did everything the right way. You went to school, you were respectful at home, you didn't have a child.
Exactly.
You did everything accordingly to the set way that things are supposed to be done.
And then you're a boy and you're sitting at home, and now society says, you know, a man must make things happen, must be resourceful and so forth. And you're trying, right? But the system it's very difficult to navigate the system with those particular rules. And if we're not kind to that, right, we're creating a generation of depressed men because they're measuring them according to the standards that are not appropriate for this particular time, if you look at the context of the society that we're living in. And I think that's what a lot of people are saying. They're saying, I don't know how to navigate the system. And because I don't know how to navigate the system, I feel like a failure. And people are articulating that in the most, I could say, unkind way. So, for example, you know, when a man is being called a simp, or whatever it is, the term that Gen Zs use, and he's being called that because of the fact that he's honoring, you know, like the example you said, he's honoring his heart, and he's being with a woman. The woman might be a breadwinner and so forth. And it's working for him. But now society says, oh no, you are weak because you're subscribing to that. It's eating him inside. And I think that's why I'm saying, I'm begging people, please, can we receive each other with care? Because there's a lot of people who are sitting in their tiny little corners and they are depressed and they are sad. And some of the things have nothing to do with whether they're good people or not.
And whether they're deserving or worthy. It's absolutely relevant. When you mentioned that you had an ex, you had come out of a relationship, and then you got into the space. What did you change about your own dating patterns? Because obviously, it's like you're not going to go to the dentist that has rotting teeth. And, you know, when people see a dating coach, they always want you to prove your credibility with what you have, right? So, you know, when I met you, you were not yet married. And I just thought your mind is so brilliant. But I also understand if you're giving dating advice, society expects to see proof of that. So outside of what society expects, what did you have to change about yourself, your expectations, how you approach dating when you became a dating coach and understood human behavior a lot more?
I realized that I was dating at the level of my self-esteem. And the first thing I needed to change was my self-esteem. The way I saw myself, why I thought I was worthy or not worthy of certain things. You know, in my book I talk about the East Rand Girls syndrome. It's really a small town.
East Rand Girls. I've never heard of that. Please tell me what the East Rand... And I still have to read her book. I do have her book. Quickly remind the title. So it's
The Dating Playbook.
The Dating Playbook, guys. It is everywhere. Go and find it. You can order it online. Okay, East Rand Girls syndrome.
So generally, you know, I come from Benoni. And there, you know...
Wait, does Bedford View count as East Rand Girls?
Well, it does. Well, it doesn't count from the syndrome perspective.
Okay, what is it?
So, you know, when I was young, you'd come to Johannesburg and you'll see these kids from Soweto or the northern suburbs, and they looked like they got their lives together. They were amazing. And then I got to varsity and I was like, why would a great guy ask me out? Because, I mean, you have Relebogile, they twang, they're amazing, you know, they're pretty and everything like that.
Yeah.
Why would he look at me? So I used to self-sabotage. So even if a guy who was my type and the guy that I was really into would look at me, I would settle for the safe guys. And I'm sorry if my exes are looking at, are watching this, but all the guys that I've dated pre-2010 were the safe guys, to be quite honest.
Really? As in safe, as in on paper? They were the right guy on paper?
No, they were the Mr. Can't Believe. They were the guys who couldn't believe they got me. Even though they saw me as a prize.
Girl, you're saying so many things in that line.
They were the Mr. Can't Believe I got the girl. So even though I was a prize to them, I couldn't see that I was a prize to myself.
Ma'am.
Because they were safe, because I knew that the likelihood of a hotter, prettier, more intelligent girl taking this guy was zero. Because
that
he
is
just
so...
could not believe.
I'm busy thinking about my dating history and I'm like, damn.
Exactly. So I had to fix my self-esteem because I knew the type of guys I wanted to be with. I always knew that. You know, I always knew the type of man that I wanted to be with and so forth. But if you look at the guys I dated pre-2010, you know, there's a friend of mine, may she rest in peace, Danielle, she was to be like, afterwards, she's like, don't tell people you dated her because they won't believe you. And seriously, some of them, they'd be like, we are lame, to be quite honest. Because I had a low self, so I had to fix the way I saw myself. And I had to understand, why do I see myself in this manner? And
you know who actually said that line? Oprah Winfrey once said in one of her shows, if you want to know where a woman is at, like psychologically, emotionally, look at her relationship and the man she's with.
Yes.
And then how he treats her is how she feels about herself.
Exactly.
And I've never forgotten that
You know,
line.
there's a saying that says, show me who you're sleeping with and I'll tell you your whole philosophy about your life. You date at the level, and you know, weird enough, TikTok, the first video I trended, and half of the people wanted to kill me and some of them wanted to hug me, was you date at the level of your self-esteem. The partner you're with is a reflection it shows the degree in which you love yourself. How he treats you, even the person that you are selecting. And sometimes unconsciously we're selecting people whereby, you know, there are women whereby they actively select players. They actually actively select men who are going to disappoint them because they don't believe they are worthy. So and it becomes easier to tell society, oh, you know, he was into 10 women, you know, it's not my fault. But they actively select those men because of the fact that they do not believe that they're worthy of love. And they think that if they select the kind of man they want to be with, ultimately he'll see flaws in her and he'll leave her. And I had to fix that about myself. And I spent some time fixing that. And one of the things I want to emphasize is that you have people and they sit and you know, there's a lot of the people, especially who come to my master classes and so forth, and they are into self-development. They buy these books, they read everything, they go to every single master class and so forth and whatever. And then when they have to go out there and implement, they don't. They just sit here with the books and the self-development and they're like, I'm healing, I'm healing, I'm healing. But what you have to realize is that you get to learn more about yourself when you engage with other people. And what I did was that after I learned all these tactics and read every self-development book around dating, I went and I put myself out there. And that's what Gen Zs are scared to do. They're very scared to put themselves out there because the best dating decision you can ever make is knowing what to say no to. And the only way you can know what to say no to is if you understand your values and what makes you tick. And the only way you can know your values and what makes you tick is when they are tested.
And even just to add on to what you're saying, I just thought about the fact that, you know, you talk about the self-sabotage part of sometimes a woman will keep dating the same guy because she does not feel worthy of better. I also just have this belief that sometimes, and I'm going to include myself, we will date the guy who will disappoint us so that we don't have to be accountable.
Yes.
Because it does take two to tango.
Yes.
And in the same way that you can say, oh, stop walking all over me, stop treating me
Yes.
like a doormat. It's also like, get the up. You know what I
Exactly.
mean?
Yeah.
And I realized it was easy to villainize the guy who is the bad guy, so that I don't have to take responsibility.
Exactly.
And it's such a hard truth to come to terms with, because no woman goes like consciously out saying, okay, who's the next guy that's going to cheat on me, or blah blah blah, but somehow
You end up-
unconsciously you end up in the same place, which also helps you not have to address yourself.
Exactly. You know, that example that you're making. So after I learned the tactics, I realized that I'm an emotionally unavailable person. And it's a long story as to why I'm emotionally unavailable. That's why I make a very good dating coach.
Yes.
Because, people will tell me, oh, I've seen different relationship coaches and so forth and whatever. But it's like, I'm not getting the hard truth. I'm able to give people the hard truth simply because when you cry, I'm like, oh, okay. But, while a person who's a deep empath probably will struggle with this kind of work, especially the kind of stories that we hear, and some of them are rooted in trauma, like people really go through really terrible things in life. But I realized after I was picking guys who were emotionally unavailable because of the fact that I didn't want to open myself up to somebody. So it was always easier to either date the player or the guy who's emotionally unavailable, because, I can always say, oh.
Also, that's what you knew, because I also have realized if all you are comfortable with is dysfunction,
Yes.
your natural instinct will be to maintain
Yes.
dysfunction.
Yeah.
So even when the guy's gone, you've broken up with him, there is a certain level of discomfort that you find comfort in.
Exactly.
So now when you do meet the guy that's not cheating, that you start to test him, right? Even though you're kind of self-sabotaging. So let me scream, let me start a fight, let me accuse him of let me actually cheat, let's see. And the more you do that to test this person and test yourself so that you can prove all your theories right.
Yeah.
Oh, I knew he would.
Yeah.
Oh, I knew. It is such a mind fuck, if I'm just going to say. It is a total mind fuck. And on the one hand, the reason I love for Gen Zs what they have today is they have access to so much information. But where I feel for them is they have access to so much information.
Exactly.
Now to sift through the bad info and the good info, I mean, even just the psychology terms, we're using the word narcissist now. We're using the word
And
trauma.
over-diagnosing
Yes.
and self-diagnosing. Even when,
Yes.
you know what, you only have problems. There's nothing wrong with you. Like you don't have a condition of some sort. But we're finding that we're putting labels to things. That's what I'm finding. And I find this labeling thing there's a place for labels. I think there's a place where you must be able to recognize certain kinds of behaviors. We do have narcissists and all these other interesting people in life. But I think what we're also doing is that we're putting labels. What I find, especially if I look around my social circle, the women who usually are very quick to term the guys they're dating as narcissists are usually the women who are very quick to assign blame without introspection. And I'm finding that we're using these labels because of the fact it's easier to label somebody as something instead of saying, actually, the situation is as such that we are either not compatible or we couldn't resolve conflict. But, if I assign a label, then I'm shifting the responsibility or the blame to the next person. I'm finding that we're living in a society like that. And hence why, for me, if you look at a lot of my content, I don't usually talk about labels in terms of this is a narcissist and so forth. I move away from those particular words. And simply because I think first thing, to be able to diagnose or self-diagnose, you really need a psychologist. And people, they come to these conclusions without any professional advice that they've gotten from someone. So that's number one. And number two if we go around labeling, and it goes back to really receiving each other with care. If we go around labeling, we're not solving anything. We're just assigning blame. And where we are as a collective, as people, we cannot afford to sit and just assign blame. We as a collective are realizing these patterns in our society. We are realizing what it's doing to us and what it could potentially do to the society if they're not addressed. So sitting in our little corners and labeling people does not help. What we need to do is we almost need to co-create solutions. And what I'm finding is the two sexes are sitting here. The men are pointing fingers at women. Women are pointing fingers at men. You know, content is being created about men and women and so forth. But no one's co-creating a solution. No one is coming together and saying, like, at the end of the day, we are coupled beings as human beings. We thrive. We thrive when we're in a sense of community. We thrive when we are coupled. We thrive, right? Regardless of whether you're in the same sex or opposite sex, it doesn't matter. We thrive when we are coupled. That's why, you know, as much as we've spent like the last 8 years literally pointing fingers at each other, but people still want to date. If dating was not that important, why do people still want to date? And it's because it's an innate need.
That it's companionship.
Yeah, the wanting to be in a fulfilling relationship is how we are. It's almost like designed as human beings. I mean, there's lots of research in terms of why we evolve the way why we have evolved to the way we've evolved, and the role of interpersonal relationships in our evolution, and why it's very important, to the point where they reduce it to the survival of babies is based on the fact that, you know, if they structure and a solid interpersonal relationship, what it does to the development of the child. We are like that as human beings. So sitting in our little corners and pointing fingers at each other is not helping anyone. And I think it's time that we co-created a solution. And this is the challenge I'm presenting to both males and females. It's about time we co-created a solution. And maybe it's trial and error, and we'll perfect it as we go. But we've had about 8 or 10 years sitting in a little corner. Men are dogs, men are this and this. Like, we even bored of the labels now. Like, it's like, oh, okay, we've heard it before.
Also, the challenge with labels is that it limits how much of the person you are willing to get to know. Because if now there is a box, and you've already labeled them, you're going to miss out on getting to know more of the person. When you say that you started to put yourself out there, what does that mean? Does that mean you were like on the dating apps? Does it mean that you will have the guts to go up to a man, say something, wink, take your drink, and then, like, what does putting yourself out there mean?
So, luckily enough, by the time I met my husband, I'd survived the dating apps. I'm 43 years old, so, you know, we're still boy meets girl on the street. But I was saying yes to dates. I was saying yes to being wined and dined. I would say it's free food. Like, for me,
I remember you saying this.
If I can make public appearances with you and I feel like you're safe, it's free food. Like, honestly, when people are like, oh, it's free food.
You know, I have to tell you guys, this woman has been preaching the same thing for years. And one of the things I remember you telling me was to say, if you are ready to date, say yes, right? And you were saying, don't go to his place, make it a public. I think things are probably even a little bit more dangerous than the time we were having that conversation. And, I can't believe I'm remembering so much. You even said the art of dating has been lost because you want to only focus on one person at a time, as opposed to date. And that doesn't mean sleep with people. Just date people, say yes. And to me, I was like, what? No, even the para? Must I say yes to him?
All I'm saying is that, you know, if you have 10 guys asking you out, probably 3 are going to be dodgy. And then the rest are worth
the meal.
Listen, guys, it's the inflation. I mean, we just survived that. Like, free meals. And this is the reason why I say this, is that, you know, when you go, so this is what I learned by going on different dates.
Yes.
I learned that most people probably are only attracted to 20% of the population, of the men or the females that you meet, right? And you're going to meet some people and they're going to be great people, but they're not great for you. And then you're going to meet people where you obviously are like, no, this is not going to happen, right? And then you're going to meet people who are going to teach you something about you. We're going to challenge the way you think. We're going to present something where you're like, I never thought about that. You're going to learn so much about yourself in the process that by the time, because, you know, we have these lists. We're like, these are my standards. I want a guy who's like this and this and this. And I'm like, what informs that? And then it's like, oh, you know, and mostly it's TV and pop culture that informs
and
these
social
standards
media
that we have, right? But you know, when you go and you meet people and you interact with people, it allows you to refine your standards to the point where you're like, you know, I started with 10 and then I had 3. Because I realized that actually, ultimately, this is who I am. And I'm learning things about me. So for example, I met a lot of guys because now I'd learned the art of attraction. So I knew how to create an environment.
to release your pheromones.
Yeah. How to create an environment whereby the object of my desire is attracted to me.
Yes.
And then I met guys who immediately wanted to get married and just wanted a wife. And I mean,
No, because it's the time in their lives where it's like it's settling time. So
Exactly.
whoever's there.
yeah. And I had to ask myself, am I looking for marriage or am I looking for love? Right? And I had to learn these things, you know, about myself to the point where I got to the point where I was like, okay, this is what I am looking for in life. And you know what conclusion I got to? I married my father.
So this is textbook psychology stuff.
I married my father. If you look at my husband, I'm extroverted, he's introverted, he's got personality Z, I've got personality everybody. But I was happy. And also, you know, there's one friend of mine, and she was like looking for the successful guy who does this and whatever, but who comes home at 5 and cooks. And I was like, if I had a husband who comes home at 5 and cooks, I'll be bored, right? But I just realized that the norm I saw growing up, and my parents had a healthy relationship. And when I say healthy relationship, people must realize this, you know, when you've seen people be in a relationship where they fight, they love each other, they cherish each other and so forth, that is a healthy representation. Because I actually had friends at my place, and the one girl said, oh, I used to observe your father. He used to take us to this place and do this and this and this and this. And I was like, I want a husband just like your father. And I said to him, you know, my father had faults too, right? And so she was divorced, but she was measuring her husband one-dimensional based on all the positives she's seen about my father, right? And she didn't see that, you know, people are human beings. They also have the other weaknesses and so forth. And every time this guy presented weaknesses, she thought, oh, you can't be the one.
Because you're canceling.
Yeah, there's something wrong with you and so forth and whatever. And for me, I mean, I was able to enter a relationship and be like, okay, these are his weaknesses, these are his strengths. But in discovering and being with going on dates with lots of interesting people, like literally lots of, I got stories for days, lots of interesting people. I realized actually, these are the values I was brought up with. And I've re-examined these values and they make sense to me. And I want a partner who's compatible with these values. But if I had never gone on those dates with those men, never discovered that about myself, I probably would be looking for Prince Charming.
So what did you have to make peace with, peaceful one, when you were deciding that this is your person? And the reason I'm saying deciding is because, yes, I do believe in love at first sight. I do believe in instant connections.
Yeah.
But I also believe that a commitment is a daily
thing.
A daily verb.
Yeah.
It's an action word every single day.
I had to make peace with the fact that it is okay to be vulnerable. I had single withdrawal symptoms.
What? Single withdrawal guys, I'm learning so many things. Please tell me what single withdrawal symptoms.
I didn't miss being single. I missed the freedom of being single. And I also missed the whole idea of I didn't need to be vulnerable with anyone. And for me, making a decision to get married, I think in the first 2 years of, I'm convinced my husband loves me. Like, never mind he tells me he loves me, but that man loves me, because I would have never married myself, to be quite honest. The first 2 years of my marriage was me grappling with the idea of being vulnerable, of being open. Imagine you're married and you're struggling with being open and being vulnerable.
And you're a dating coach, and he knows.
And I'm a dating coach at the same time, right? And whatever. And that's what I tell people. You know, people think, oh, because you're a dating coach, you learned these things and, you know, everything became perfect. And I said, you know, if you go back to my Facebook post 10 years ago and right now, and you see the growth that has happened as a person, you know, I still preach the same principles, but I think I do it more with empathy, right? With more understanding, because I have matured as a person. But the key thing that I had to do when I decided to enter a relationship, it wasn't, I mean, I met somebody whereby it was just amazing. I just feel like I was extremely, extremely blessed. You know, whoever's looking out for me somewhere, I was extremely blessed to meet somebody that I was highly, highly compatible with from a values perspective and the things that we're interested in life. And somebody who actually wanted to be with me. I didn't need to convince this man or do anything like that. And I feel like the biggest thing was for me was entering the relationship, knowing that I love this person. I want to be with, I actually don't want to be with anyone else. I want to be with this person. But I was too afraid to be vulnerable. And I had to learn to be vulnerable. And sometimes I used to test this man because I thought I wasn't worthy of his love. And I had to learn that. And I had to grow within that as a person. And I had to take my own advice, you know, because you know, some of the things I had learned, I was yet to, because some situations put you in certain, some things put you in certain situations where you can apply the practical things or the
So you are
theory.
tested in the things that you know.
Yeah. And I was now entering those situations where I could test those theories. And I was learning. And for me, I think, you know, yeah, when it came to dating was easy for me. It was going. I look at my friends right now, I'm Johnny. I'm like Johnny. Like literally, it was the easiest thing in the world. Once I figured it out, it was easy. I was spoiled. Shiver. The stories I'm hearing right now, I'm like, I don't know how. Like, it's just, I don't know. Sometimes I wish I could enter some of my friends' bodies and go date on their behalf. And when I've secured the relationship, exit the body and then carry on from here, because clearly, you know, something is not happening. It was easy for me, but committing was difficult for me.
What, and if it was a moment, did you have a moment where you are like, this is the one?
I knew from second date that he was.
Really?
I came back and I told my sister, and I said, I met my husband to be, he just doesn't know he's going to marry me yet. And my sister's like, yeah, you'll be born in 3 months. But I knew from the second date he's going to be.
What did he do or say that made that penny drop or the light go on?
So I met my husband 8 years before we dated.
Really?
Yeah. And when I met him, I was like, he's the most serious person in the world. And I was just like, and just a funny story was, I met him, he had just came back from living in New York, and my husband is a wine connoisseur. And then they gave me red wine, me, a girl from Benoni, they're giving me red wine, and the red wine was hot, and I put ice. Oh, Jesus, does this guy go on for days about, how could you do that? And I thought, you're so serious about life, you need to loosen up in life, right?
Because you're like, it's not that deep.
And then 8 years later, we fought on Facebook, and there were 5 of us on a post. And then at the end, 20 responses later, it was only me and him. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm a dating coach. If he's so interested in replying, he's going to slide into my DMs. And I waited, and he slid into my DMs. And I was going on a date with him because it was free food. And the first date, I was like, wow, you're pleasantly surprising. You're actually not what I thought you were. And I
Because you had labeled him and boxed him?
Yeah. And then the second date, I felt at home. I felt at ease. It was the most comfortable. Like, you know, the only time in my life where I felt that safe is with my father and my brother. And for the first time in my life, I felt very emotionally safe with this person. And I thought, this is my husband. He just doesn't know it, but he's going to marry me.
So how long did it take for him to pop the question, and did you know?
So, I knew, okay, so it took us 2 years to date, but I was working, and I was working at a consulting firm. And for some strange reason, I knew I was like, this guy's gonna propose. And then my friend's gonna kill me. And then I called a friend of mine and I said, is he gonna propose? Because like...
You had a feeling.
Yeah, something is... And then my friend was, because for some strange reason, I saw his Pinterest board and it had rings, right? And I was like, there's no way this guy's looking up at rings if he's not gonna propose. And I was like, is he gonna propose? And my friend was just leave it. No, I'm not gonna share anything. Leave it. So I kind of like had an idea, and I think he proposed when I was suspecting. He proposed like 2 or 3 months after I was suspecting. But I thought, I was like, the day was a surprise, but I wasn't surprised he proposed. I mean, I knew.
You just knew.
No, I was like, this is one thing that I believe in life, and this is what really transformed my love life. I believe once you believe you are worthy, and this is what is laid out for you on this planet, be it, it's the power of manifestation. For me, I was like, I'm Dudu Nhlabathi. At that time, I was Dudu Nhlabathi. I was like, I'm Dudu Nhlabathi. I'm worthy of love. I'm worthy of a man this caliber. There's no reason why he won't be with me. And there's no reason why he won't propose. So I believed that I was worthy of that relationship. I believed that I was worthy of him. I just did not know if I was good enough for him, and because of my emotional unavailability.
So, first year, second year of marriage, where you are slowly learning, fast forward a good couple of years into marriage, you're a mom. How have your views and personal views, not necessarily the things you've studied on human behavior, gender roles, those interpersonal relationships, but how have your views on love changed?
I think, the main thing for me is I still ask myself, what is love? I still haven't got a satisfactory answer of what is love. And I don't know if you can equate love to 1 or 2 or 3 words, to be quite honest. That's number 1. Number 2, I tell this to my husband all the time, I value a relationship more than I value marriage. Marriage for me is an instrument to protect myself and to protect my child in the context of the African culture when you get married. But for me, my husband would be like, what are the things that we can do to make this marriage interesting or solidify it? And I'm like, I'm actually not interested in that. If the relationship between me and you, how we feel about each other, and there are weeks where I'm probably the most boring person in the world. And there are weeks where he's probably the most boring person in the world. And there are weeks where we're excited about each other. But if there's one thing that never changes, at least from my perspective, is that feeling of I want to be with him. Even when I'm bored, when it's exciting, when I think this, when he's got a bit of a boop, when he's lost the weight and so forth and whatever. And for me, I think this whole idea of this Hollywood love, that people, when they see each other all the time, they need to be excited about each other, or these are the markers that say that you are happy, I think puts a lot of pressure on people. And hence why in my work, if anyone reads my book and my dating book and so forth, I focus more on you as a person. I believe that when you are fine, when you are in a happy space, you are able to show up in a relationship. And because people focus so much on the relationship, we must schedule date night, we must do this and so forth and whatever. For me, I'm like, that is nice, makes the relationship exciting and so forth and whatever. But going on date nights, if you are not okay, will not make you happy, right? And the other person, it's not the responsibility of the other person to make you happy. I love my husband, but he's not responsible for making me happy. And I'm not responsible for making him happy. And And there are times where I'm going through things where I'm like, it's not your job to try and fix me. I'm just going through what I'm going through, and I'll find my rhythm and I'll find my space and so forth. So I'm a big believer in the person and not the relation. And that's why I call myself a dating coach and not a relationship coach. Because for me, if you are fine as a person, the relationship just sorts itself out.
It's smooth sailing. If as individuals you're in a good place.
If you are fine as a person, the relationship sorts itself out. So I think, in marriage I've learned that, there's a saying that says when the mother develops, so does the child. And I also believe when you develop, so does your relationship develop. And I'm more focused on, when they say you fill your jar, and being very clear about what fills your jar. And marriage for me is one of the things that fills my jar. It's not everything. My son is one of the things that fills my jar. It's not everything. But I know when I'm happy, I show up in the most pleasant manner for all the people that I love and I'm responsible for.
Are you comfortable to never have the answer for what love is? And I'll tell you why I'm going to say this. I have found that not only is the English language limiting, any language is limiting.
Yes.
In terms of, many will say love is an action word, love is a doing word, all of these things. I almost feel like, especially after becoming a mother, that it's not a word. It's not, you can't describe it with a word. You can maybe show it to a person or have little moments. Because I had to say to myself, what is love in the context of all its forms, be it for my parents, be it for an interpersonal relationship, siblings, my son. And I realized I had to stop trying to create all these fancy descriptions to tick boxes. And I don't know, I almost feel like the conversations that are happening, just to, obviously loop back to how dating and why it's so difficult for this new generation that is finding themselves still living with their parents, struggling with an income, all of those things, and trying to figure out what love is. I don't even believe there are words.
I think, I don't care if I ever figure out what love is, because I feel like the minute I want to put a description to it, it puts me under pressure to show up in a certain way. And for me, I just have realized, I'm a 43-year-old woman. I'm going through hormone replacement therapy, and I've had, I got married, had a baby, did my MBA, in a very short period of time. And in trying to show up for people in a certain way, I ended up being exhausted. I mean, in 2023, I spent most of my time either in ER or in hospital, right? Because I'd put myself under so much pressure. And the guilt of parenting, the guilt of am I showing up enough as a wife and so forth. And simply because I feel like if you live in a society that says, if you're a good parent, this is how you show up. If you're a good wife, this is how you love. This is how you do this and do. Once you put a description to things like you're saying, it's a spiritual thing, right? It comes from deep within, right? And once you put a description to it, you feel like you have to live up to that and you have to show up in a certain way. For example, my language of love is acts of service. You can tell me you love me once a year, it's fine. I don't, like my husband tells me, his words of affirmation, he tells me he loves me all the time. I think I probably tell my husband I love him 3 times a year.
3 times?
I used to feel so guilty.
Really?
Because I used to feel like he tells me he loves me all the time, he reminds me and so forth. But then I realized, that's not me.
You tell him you love him in other ways.
I show up.
Yes.
I make sure I make your life as easy as possible. I show up for the things that matter. And for me, once I accepted that that is my language of love, I stopped putting myself under pressure to demonstrate love in a manner that society says it's like this and so forth. And when I stopped putting myself under pressure, I became happier, I became healthier, and I just became a more pleasant person to be with, right? And ultimately what we want is, we want to come back home to somebody who makes us feel safe. And I want him to come home to somebody who makes him feel safe. And the only way I can make him feel safe is if I'm happy.
Yeah.
And hence why I say, I don't care to teach people what the perfect relationship looks like. I care to teach people to say, how do you become the person who's happy with self so that you can build healthy interpersonal relationships? I can give you the principles. We are all different people. You'll apply your own template and you'll build your own template. All I can help you is the principles. And my principles are rooted in finding yourself, anchoring yourself, being clear in terms of who you are.
If you were to give 3 tips for singles that are currently dating or coming out of healing from a previous relationship, wanting to go into dating, what are those 3 tips that you would share?
The first one is dust settles and you don't. That's number 1. Never ever date. Never date below your league. Do not settle. If you need to go and heal yourself, you need to work on yourself, you need to work on your self-esteem, your self-image and so forth, in order to be able to attract the person that you desire, do that. Number 2, forgive yourself. You know, sometimes you're going to navigate the space and you're going to find yourself waking up to a silly that you are like, well, how did I get here? Or I had no intention of sleeping with this person so soon and so forth. Just because you made a mistake does not diminish your value. Does not lower your value.
Yeah.
Always, you know, treat yourself as a valuable being. Even when you're making mistakes, self-correct, but never ever diminish your value. And then the most important thing is this, especially for women. If you want to date at the top of your pickings, in whatever segments you want to date in, you have to match that standard. So what is happening is a lot of people are wanting to date high-value men, but they themselves are not high value. And you need to be that which you are looking for, right? And it is very important because sometimes we say we want to date this type of person, and then I say, okay, go and match this type of person. Then you realize, actually, this is not for me. It's not me. There are some people who are happy with a simple life, simplicity, and so forth, because they themselves, the values they live by are very simple, right? So once you start matching, then you realize what you want to match. And it's very important. So the basis is, whatever you're looking for, be that. And if you're struggling to be that, just realize how hard it is for that person to be that. Because sometimes we have these standards. People can't meet those standards because they are unreasonable. We can't even meet our own standards. So it allows you to have empathy, and it allows you to be clear in terms of who you want to partner with that speaks to your values.
Yeah, ne? Sis Dudu, I will never stop calling you dear Sis Dudu because that's the OG name. Thank you so much for coming through. Thank you for sharing, but also just opening up about your own personal experiences. I think, you know, the way that you share advice, I know sometimes within the mix of content, it can be taken out of context. But I think the focus on developing, healing self-correcting is really, really the foundation of what all of us need to be doing, whether we're trying to date or not. Thank you so much for joining the conversation today on the Relebogile Mabotja Podcast. Dudu's book is available. I'll put a link down below. Put your questions for her as well down in the comment section, and she will come through and answer them. And then let us know who else you'd like to see on the show. Write a little bit of a motivation or contact us, or keep putting down in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell. You guys know exactly what to do. This is the Relebogile Mabotja Podcast. Until next time.